Hey everybody, I'm a little bit late again. I always seem to be a little bit late. But I'm also super tired today because Ina decided to get up at like 4:30 this morning. And even though I kept trying to put her back to sleep, Ina decided that 4:30 was a fabulous time to be awake. And so I have been up. I've been up since 4:30 my time, and Ina took one mid-morning nap already, but I don't nap very well. So I've made a list of things, so hopefully I don't forget all of the things I wanted to tell you today. We also have a slight change of venue because it's storming here in St. Louis. We've got like a bunch of thunderstorms going on. And it started to rain just before I was due to, do my video. So you're actually in my bedroom, and this is like my little book corner. So I've got like my craft stash books over here, and then these are like all the projects that I'm working on. And every so often I get this like cleaned off more, but not right now. So anyway, with all of that being said, today, we're focusing on gauge and why it's important for our socks. We are going to talk about what method you're going to use. I'll talk you through the different methods, and you can choose a method that works for you. I am going to be showing you a top-down sock because that's the way that I like to knit. If you want to do a toe-up sock, then I can do a toe-up sock after we do a top-down sock. Toe-up socks just aren't my favorite, and I'll talk about that again. Let's see, important things that are going on with Black Sheep. So Tina is moving, and the shop is moving, and she's going to have appointment hours again, and I think she's also going to have groups there. That's the word. Boy, that was hard. She's also going to do groups occasionally at the new place. We have the IOLI Unconvention coming up in July. That's, I don't know, like July 19th or 20th through the 24th or 5th. I can't remember exactly. Again, I'm very tired because Ina got me up at 4:30 and I have not been back to bed yet today. And that was 4:30 my time, which is 2:30 Pacific. That would be 3:30 Mountain or 5:30 Eastern. Anyway, it was very early for me. I am not a morning person, like ever. Not a morning person. Anyway, so the IOLI Unconvention is coming in July, and we are vending, and I get to talk about, or maybe I just get to show off some of the photos for my classes for next year and talk about what I was going to do this year but will now be doing in 2022. So that's exciting. Let's see what else is going on. Slow Yarn Crawl is still happening, and don't forget that we do have free shipping at Black Sheep with all orders of $75 plus, always. That's the way it always goes within the United States. Let's see. Oh, we're doing lots of cals, both knit along and crochet along this summer. So Tina currently has her Ben Gulben shrug knit along going on, and I think she has the first video on YouTube. She has the second one almost ready to go, and then she wants to do a t-shirt. So she's picked out a knit t-shirt and a crochet t-shirt. There's more info on the Black Sheep website about that. There was info in the last newsletter that'll go out again hopefully this Friday. I'll do another one with more info. We, of course, are doing socks here on the Facebook Live. And so I'm kind of doing a knit along with socks. And then I haven't discussed it with Tina yet, but I don't think she'll care. I want to do another knit along after the socks are done. A little further into July, I want to do a lace knit along. And I want to use some of that Nova Scotia that I ordered from Handmaiden in this sea lace. It's very lovely stuff. It's really lovely stuff. And I think I'm going to do Elroy and do a lace knit along in July. So if that sounds good to you, then let me know. I know I missed some comments last time, so I'm going to try to really pay attention in case anybody comments today. luckily nobody had a pressing question, but I felt bad when I saw, like, after the video was over that I hadn't answered questions. Anyway, I went ahead and I grabbed some Lilliput. So I have a confession. I haven't managed to wind my Lilliput yarn yet. I know, it's terrible. I was going to get it done today until, you know, Ina got up at 4:30, and then I went and did a bunch of other stuff and got a lot of my chores done, but did not manage to get my yarn wound. But luckily I had some other Lilliput that was hanging out. This one is, I forget what this one is. This one's called Summer. So it's just a pretty brown, but this is also Lilliput. So I went ahead and I did a gauge swatch on the Summer because I wanted to talk about some of the important points about gauge. So here I've just cast on like 20 stitches. Here's my little swatchy. I've cast on 20 stitches and I've knit a row, purled a row so that I have stockinette on one side and I've got the reverse side there. So my right side and my wrong side. And I've just tried to make a little bit of a swatch, and I want to talk about several things when it comes to swatching for socks. And I know a lot of you are going, why should I swatch for socks? I shouldn't have to swatch for socks. I can just rip it out. Well, that's true. You could just rip it out, but you know, would you rather rip out like 20 stitches or would you rather rip out 60 stitches? That's how I think about it. I would rather rip out a small swatch, and I would rather rip out, you know, a small in the round swatch versus a large in the round swatch. So just a difference of opinion, but I think swatching is really important no matter what you do. I have a lot of experience now. When I first got started, these were the things that I did. I would swatch my yarn with the needles that I intended to use in the pattern that was recommended by my pattern. So if it was supposed to be stockinette, or if it was supposed to be in a specific stitch pattern, I paid attention, read my pattern, and I made certain that I did whatever it said for my swatch. I usually did at least 20 stitches, sometimes 30, and then I would knit until I had at least 3 inches, cast off, wash it, let it dry, and then measure my gauge. And the reason why it's important to do all of those things are, if you use different needles, then you're going to get different gauge on the yarn. So it could be that, and I know this is true, my gauge for these needles, if I'm going to do magic loop, is different than if I'm going to do double points. These are signatures. This is a signature 1 fixed, but I will get different gauge doing a flat swatch on my circular signatures versus doing my double points. And I know that about myself. So once you know that about yourself, you can compensate for it. But in the beginning, it's really important that you work in the round, that you work the pattern that you're given. So like if it says work in stockinette, do a stockinette swatch in the round. You only have to cast on 20 stitches, but it is important to go ahead and do it and wash it and let it dry, because your gauge will change, especially when you're a newer knitter, from an unwashed to a washed project. It just will. As you become more confident, as you get a few more projects under your belt, as you learn about your gauge, you will be able to tell that, like for me personally, I can do it's Marshmallow. Say hi, Marshmallow. So I can do a flat swatch in stockinette, and I am going to get the same gauge as if I was doing it in the round. And that's me personally, because my knit stitch and my purl stitch are close enough that the difference is mitigated from flat versus round knitting. So I can do either and still check my gauge, and it'll be the same whether I did a flat swatch or an in the round swatch. Not everyone knits that way though. So you need to understand how you knit so that you can get gauge, because when you don't get gauge and you have to rip out 6 inches of a sock, it's really frustrating. And that can be because your sock is too big or your sock is too small. So both sides of the coin there. Once I have done my swatch and I've measured, then it tells me how many stitches per inch I have. And I have a really simple formula that I use for figuring out how big to make my socks. So, for example, my friend that I'm knitting these red socks for, right, these red socks. So I have, you know, the one done. This person has a 9.5-inch ball measurement, and you measure that around the widest part of your foot just behind your toes. That's the ball of your foot. I would put my foot up here, but then I might fall off my chair. That would be bad. So when you measure, you do want to measure the widest part of your foot. It's called the ball of your foot. And you're going to measure all the way around. You want the circumference. And then you are going to take that measurement. So hers was 9.5. And you're going to multiply that by your stitches per inch. And it happened to be that I had 7 stitches per inch. And then you're going to take that measurement and you want a little bit of negative ease. So we're going to talk ease for a minute. There's negative and there's positive. Negative means that when you put a piece of knitting on, that it will hug your body a little bit more because it has negative ease. It's supposed to fit more tightly. It's negative. It doesn't fit perfectly. It fits just a little bit tightly. And we want that with socks and we want that with hats because we want it to hug our heads. Even with a slouchy hat, you want to make sure that your ribbing hugs your head a little bit because you don't want your hat to fall off and you don't want your socks to fall down. So you need to make sure you have a little bit of negative ease. And a lot of sweaters, you'll find that there's positive ease because a lot of people like to have a little extra room in the sweaters so they can, you know, put on a layer or two underneath it. So that's your difference between your negative and your positive ease. So my sock formula is always the circumference of the ball of your foot times your stitches per inch times 0.9 because I'm going to do that 10% negative ease. So we're going to take it at 90% of what it should be. And what that works out for with a 9.5-inch foot and 7 stitches per inch is I want about 60 stitches in my sock. And there's a little wiggle room there. You might add or subtract a stitch because maybe, you know, you have like 58.3. Well, okay, you can't knit 0.3 stitches. That just doesn't happen, right? So you might take it at 58, you might do it at 59. A lot of times I like to have an even number so that the halves of my socks split easily. So that's something to consider when you're getting ready to start your sock. Technique. I talked about double points versus magic loop versus, oh no, did I put them in here? Yes. Versus the flyers, which are kind of like having socks on 2 circs. No matter which method you choose, make sure that you are making your swatch, your gauge swatch with that method. So if you are a die-hard double point person, make it in the double points. If you are a die-hard magic loop person, make it magic loop. That way you are making sure that your gauge is as accurate as possible. Okay, that was a lot to absorb, wasn't it? There's a lot about getting started with socks, especially if you're trying to fit them to your feet properly. Now, once you have your magic number, so you've measured around your ball, you've done your gauge swatch, and you've multiplied it by 0.9, so say your magic number is 54, then a lot of times what I do is if you're going to start toe up, then you'll want to start with something like 10 or 12 stitches and then increase 4 stitches every round until you get close to your number. And if you have to, you might only increase 2 on the last round instead of 4, but that will get you to the magic number that you need. If you're doing top down, you're going to start with that number. And if I'm doing double points, I'm going to take that number and divide it by 4. So with 60 stitches, we divide that by 4. That's 15 stitches per needle, and I'm going to work 15 stitches on each of my needles all the way around. If I'm doing magic loop, or if I'm doing the socks on 2 circs, then I'm just going to have that because I want equal numbers, because that makes it easier when we come to the heel, and also makes it easier when we come to the toe. So I always try to make sure that I'm balancing my numbers. So what you'll find is that I would put 30 stitches on one half and 30 stitches on the other half for magic loop, or for my socks on 2 circs or the Hiya Flyers. Okay, does anybody have questions about gauge, where to measure your foot, why we're doing negative ease, why it's important to swatch? in the round and with the needles you're going to use for the project, in the manner you want to knit it, and why you should at least practice swatching in the round and washing your items beforehand. Any questions? Let me see. Do I have any? I don't think I have any comments yet. If I do and I've missed you, I'm really sorry. I'm looking, but I don't see anything on. I don't see anything on here that says that I have any comments popping up, and usually the comments pop up here on the bottom. So, let's see. All right. So if you're gonna do toe up, then you have different methods that you can use to increase. So we can do a make one right, make one left. And you can just do 4 increases every other row until you have a pretty standard looking toe. You can also increase in a star pattern where you would like increase 5 stitches, knit a couple rows plain, increase 5 stitches, knit a couple rows plain, so that you have a little bit of a star spiral pattern. And when you're doing that, then you would always do a make one to the left or a make one to the right because you want it to spiral. You could also do knit one front and backs. That's going to give you a little bit of a bump that you'll see. Or you can do lifted increases, and there's paired increases there too. So there's a right lifted and a left lifted increase so that they will be equal and they'll look the same. So if you're going to start your sock from the toe up, you would cast on either 10 or 12 stitches, and you would increase in a manner that makes you happy. So you can either do it, as a very standard toe. You can practice different increases if you want. So you can try a toe with lifted increases. You can try a toe with make one increases. You could even do yarn overs and do a knit one through the back loop if you really wanted to do that. Or you could use the yarn overs as a design element and use that as your increases. Okay. If you're doing top down, which is my preferred method, then we need to talk about ribbing. And if you're doing toe up, ribbing matters too. It's just something you get to at the end of the sock and not the beginning of the sock. So you should still listen to this part. Your ribbing matters. Ribbing is what helps the sock stay up on your leg. So knit one, purl one, knit one, purl two. Those are okay. Knit two, purl one, knit two, purl two, also okay. If you start getting into like knit 3, purl 3, or like a knit 3, purl 2, then your ribbing gets kind of wide, and it may look pretty decent in the sock, but it isn't going to hug as well. My preferred ribbing for socks is either knit 1, purl 1, knit 2, purl 1, or knit 2, purl 2. So when I do my basic socks, a lot of times I either pick knit 1, purl 1, or knit 2, purl 2, because it gives me enough ribbing and it hugs the foot and it hugs the leg and it doesn't slide down, because we don't want our socks to slide down. And using that negative ease in conjunction with the ribbing really helps. Let's see. Any other questions about ribbing, perhaps? Maybe? No? Sort of? No? Okay. I will go ahead and flip this down, and we'll look at my little gauge swatch, and I will show you different ways that you can measure it to get your gauge and make decisions about your sock. So let me move needles and my other sock and my notes so I don't forget something, because, well, like I said, I got very little sleep, so my brain is not working fabulously. Okay, let me turn this. And there's the cat on the bed. Gotta love that, right? Okay. So when it comes to measuring your gauge, let's see. When it comes to measuring your gauge, I'm just gonna get this down. I have knit enough and I know my gauge enough, I've practiced enough with my sock swatches, that I do a dry swatch, just knit from the ball, and I don't wash it. I usually don't bind it off because I don't find a need to do that because I'm not washing it. I usually cast on 20 stitches, and then I will knit at least 2 inches because I want to make a big enough swatch that I can really get a sense of what's going on. This is not how the sock will pool when it is knit in the round, just so you know. This is how it works on a tiny sample. So one of my favorite methods is to go ahead and just measure all the way across. So you can see that my swatch measures in at, I'm going to call that 2 5/8 inches. So I would actually take my stitches per inch, and I would take 20 and I would divide it by 2 5/8 inches, and I would get my number. But the problem with that is, you do have a little bit of curl under on the edges. So it's going to be mostly accurate, but you could be off just a little bit. Another way that you can do this is you can lay your tape measure in, and you can just start counting. So put it in between 2 stitches, and then count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and a little bit. So I'm going to say that's at least 7 1/4, maybe 7 1/2 stitches to the inch. And I would actually take that number and I would compare it to that stitches per inch as measured across my swatch. Now, your stitches per inch is much more important than your row gauge at this point. Especially on socks, most designers are going to tell you to knit to a certain length. So you're much better off to hit your stitch gauge than your row gauge if you're following a pattern. But then we can do kind of the same thing here. We can measure all the way down. So I'm at 1 3/4 inches. And then I can count my rows, or I can just lay my my measuring tape in, and I can count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and maybe a half, maybe 9 1/2. So those are 2 different methods that are good to know because you can then compare them. We do sell a really nice little, like a gauge swatch measuring tool, which has a little magnifier in it so you can see those stitches a little bit easier, and it has the ruler right there on the swatch, so that's really nice as well. So if you are looking for a tool to help you measure your gauge, then we do sell them. We do sell them, and we do have them available. Now, something else that I really like, let me grab it, is my sock ruler. See if I can find it. Okay, maybe I can't find it. Give me just a second. Okay, I have to disappoint you. I'm not sure where I put my sock ruler at the moment, so I will have to get one. And I have one downstairs, so once I find it, I'll show it to you, and hopefully the next video I can find my sock ruler. So anyway, those are just some tips and tricks when it comes to socks, and I have knit a lot of socks, about getting started, making sure that it fits your feet, making sure that you're successful as you begin to knit your socks. Because having to rip out a sock, having to rip out anything when you're knitting is just really disappointing because you've put all of that work and that time into it. And then you have to rip it out because you've made a mistake somewhere. So if you can avoid making mistakes by taking a little extra care and a little extra precaution at the start, then you're going to be better off in the long run, and it's going to make you a happier knitter when you're knitting your socks. Okay, so Wednesday, when I come back, I will hopefully have at least my cuff done so that we can do a heel, and if nothing else, I should have the heel ready on those red socks so I can show you just a basic heel flap, and we can talk about different heels. I have located the pile of socks, so I'm going to try to lay them out and match the heels appropriately. We'll see if I get that done. Hopefully I do, cross your fingers. And let's see. Thought that I had my sock book up here, and well, you know, there it is. And then I will show you the Hoppy Feet book. So this is the book that I wrote. And we'll talk about those different heels on the socks. And I have like a whole list of all the heels and things that I used in the book. So it's all the different toes and heels and cast-ons and offs and the techniques. So we'll talk about that as well on Wednesday. That way, when you get to that point, you can reference the video and you'll be confident in making your heels. And I really hope that I haven't missed any comments. I don't see anything. I don't see anything like popping up. So I don't know. I might have to start getting the laptop out in addition to my phone so I can watch for comments on the laptop. We'll find out. So if I missed answering a question, I'm really sorry. Hopefully I didn't. Or I'll go and try to answer your question by typing it into the comments myself. Anyway, so don't forget, Slow Yarn Crawl's going on. You can couch crawl. Let's see. We have the IOLI Unconvention that's coming up. So if you are not yet a member of the International Organization of Lace Inc. and you just love lace, you should consider joining and going to the Uncon, because there should be a lot of fun. And then, like I said, Tina is moving, and so the shop is moving. So we'll keep you apprised of what's going on with that. And we have lots of knit-alongs coming up this summer. Tina's already doing the Ben Gulben one, and now we've started the sock one, and there's more info at blacksheepfiberemporium.com. So if you have a question that's not addressed there, please send me an email. My email is Kelly with an I, Kelli, @ blacksheep, ATORENCO.com. You can also send it to Tina. That's, of course, the old shop names. That's why we still have the old shop emails. But you can reach us that way. You can also send us a message through Facebook or Instagram, and I'll try to get that answered. And I will see you Wednesday. Hopefully I'll be much more rested and perhaps a little less scatterbrained. And I hope that I addressed everything that I meant to, because I did make a list. So stay safe, stay healthy, you know, keep learning, keep stretching yourself, keep crafting, and I will see you Wednesday.